Welcome everyone. This is Kapil Nakra. I will be your host for today's session on customer acquisition using digital marketing. We have about 35 participants right now. A lot of people are still in the process of logging in. So I'll just wait for another few seconds to make sure that everybody settles in, and then we'll start the session. By the time others are logging in, just to set the logistics, by default, all of you are muted. That's an extra privilege for all the panelists and possibly me. So if you have any question during the session, I would request keep typing it down in the question panel. And then once we're done with the brief round of a Q&A, then we'll open the floor for questions. Great, so I think it's time. We can start the session now. Once again, I would like to welcome all of you and thank all of you for joining in. My name is Kapil Nakra, and I'll be hosting today's session from Digital Vidya side. With me, we have an esteemed set of panelists. So let me just quickly introduce all of them first. To start with, let me introduce Nikhil Karkhanis. Nikhil Karkhanis is a marketing professional with over 11 years experience, specializing in digital marketing for the past 9 years. Worked with reputed companies and digital agencies like Thomas Cook, Deutsche Bank, and iProspect India. Currently, Nikhil is associated with Reprise Digital, expertise in handling biddable platform, all of them, including Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, native consoles, and Bing ads. And he's been handling clients across all verticals and across multiple geographies. Currently, he's handling a team of 60 people. Welcome, Nikhil. Looking forward to have an interesting discussion with you.
Thanks, Kapil.
Let me also welcome Ansan Joseph. Ansan has 10 years of experience in advertising, currently working in Group M Nexus, handling portfolio performance marketing client across various industries. He's an active member of Group M Learning and Development team as well. He's passionate about teaching the next generation of digital marketer, and he has previously worked with other agencies, including Performix, which is a publicist media company. Welcome, Ansan.
Thanks, Kapil. Thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here.
Great. Now, I would like to welcome Amish Keshwani. Amish Keshwani is currently working as a Vice President Digital Marketing at Markets and Markets. He's also a member of CMO Council. Amish has 17 years of rich experience in performance marketing and build a sustainable, predictable, scalable B2B lead generation engine with Markets and Market. I'm really looking forward to have an insightful discussion on how to handle the customer acquisition issues in the B2B marketing space particularly. Welcome, Amish.
Thank you so much, Kapil. Happy to be here.
Great. So let me now quickly welcome Ronak Jain. Ronak is Associate Director at Performix, which is one of the India's leading digital marketing agencies. Currently, he is handling a digital mandate of one of the most significant telecom player. So if you're looking for insights in the telecom industry space, Ronak is a person to look after. He has more than 6 years of experience in performance and brand marketing and has managed business across multiple industries from BFSI, hospitality, travel, telco, and gaming. Welcome, Ronak.
Thanks, Kapil. Thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here.
Great. So what I'll do is, let me just quickly do a poll. We want to have a quick understanding of who all is present today. I'm just launching this poll on your screen. Pick up an option that best describes who you are. If you're a student, then pick up the first option. If you're already working in the sales and marketing domain, pick up the second option. If you're a digital marketer, practitioners, you've been practicing it for quite some time, pick up the third option. CXO entrepreneur, pick up the fourth option. And if you're in some other functional role, but interested to learn more about digital, and that's the reason you're here, you can pick up the last option. I would request all of you to please respond to this, and then I'll close this poll and share the results with all of you. So right now there are 70 of us in the session. So I'll do a count till 5 and then I'll close the poll. 1, everybody who hasn't done it, please do it now. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Fine, so here are the results. These are the kind of people who are present today. The dominating probably segment is digital marketing practitioners as expected, and there's a lot of people from the sales and marketing background. That's also significant number. A lot of students have joined in today. I think interesting to see a lot of CXOs and entrepreneurs also joining in. That's great. And people from other functional roles as well. So I hope that must have given you an idea on kind of people you're attending the session with, and your idea about your panelist as well. So now what I'll do is I would like to, is my screen visible to all of you? Nikhil, can you please confirm?
Not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
It's visible, right?
Your visible.
Video is coming through, but the shared screen is not coming.
Screen is not visible.
Just give me a minute. I think kind of sharing screen after a long time, so sure. Yeah, I think my yeah, is my presentation now visible? Just wanted to quickly check.
No, Kapil, no. It's not. We can only see the videos, I think.
Okay, I'll so what I'll do is, I think there's some issue with this. Let me just ignore that for the time being. I would, before we actually continue and go into the deeper level in discussing about the how to do customer acquisition using digital, I just want to briefly create a context of what role digital media really plays in the customer acquisition side. And a lot of people think that digital is about acquiring customers. While that's one part of it, but what do you do once you've acquired the reach, right? And you could go to multiple channels and acquire the reach, but once you've acquired that reach, the next and kind of step in that direction is, what do you do with that reach? Either you take them to some of your online presence like your website, or maybe the microsite that you've created, or the landing page, or you try to aggregate them on some platform, maybe some social platforms or over emails. The whole purpose of aggregating audience is to ensure that you get the kind of a touch point and you're able to nurture them over a period of time. So so that's another critical part. But then once you're there on the online presence, you've done that optimization, you're kind of converting them to a lead. The next important role as a digital marketer is, what do you do with that lead? Even the lead nurturing part, how do you convert them to sales? For some of the organizations, that become a critical part where the sales cost is too high. And that's where also digital marketing plays a critical role. So when you look at the customer or the conversion optimization, the conversion optimization needs to happen at all levels, whether it's optimizing the ads to presence on websites, to where you're nurturing it, to where you're converting leads to sales. And across the board, you need to set up a metrics in place to ensure that you're well aware what is really happening throughout the cycle when it comes to customer acquisition. So in today's session, we are going to talk about all those issues, right? Whether from reach till sales. And two of the key parameters that I've seen people who are actually handling the customer acquisition related issues deal with is, one, CAC, customer acquisition cost. You will probably hear this term a lot of time in today's session also. And the second is the LTV, which is lifetime value. So the whole objective is that what percentage of the lifetime value are you spending on acquisition, whether it is 2% or 40% or 200%, and how to really optimize that. So there's businesses out there, agencies out there who are struggling with it. Now, with that as a context, let's just quickly move on to conversations in this regard. So what I'll do is, listed down some of the critical questions that I had in mind. I'll just post, ask everybody, anyone in the panel you can address all those questions, and then we'll open the questions for everyone. Open the whole discussion, and everyone can ask questions on the same.
Sure.
So let's start to understand how critical is this customer acquisition cost for your client. And Nikhil, why don't you start on this part, since you kind of work with geographically diverse kind of clients also? Is it something that's more predominant in one vertical or one geography, or so how is it? What's the criticality of customer acquisition cost?
Yeah, so I think this is a very right point that you just mentioned, Kapil. Customer acquisition cost plays a very important role, especially when it comes to budgeting your campaigns, right? So first of all, we all need to know as to what should be the client's objective. Now, in this case, let's assume that leads is the main objective, which is the important objective. We need to understand that first of all, if at all you have some past experience, and before I go into the past experience, let me tell you, each and every geography has got 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 its own KPI in order to understand what is the lead quality, uh, how much should one individual pay in order to get that lead from the digital platform, right? So campaign of client's objective is the most important part. Apart from that, we need to understand as to which platform we need to deploy the monies on in order to get that particular lead, right? Once we know that, let's say for example, if we are deploying money on Google, we are deploying money on Facebook, right? We need to cater towards the right audiences, because if you go for a very broad audience targeting, let's say for example, if my audience is catering towards elite cars, okay, so I need to make sure that I am targeting someone who has got involvement into the luxury category, right? I cannot just go on targeting someone with an age group of, let's say, 20 or 25. That is not my right target audience, right? I need to target someone who's 40 plus, if at all I need a genuine lead from a digital platform, right? So choosing the right set of audience is again the important part. Apart from that, we also need to focus mainly on the retargeting piece, right? Because we do have some before going on to any digital platform, we do have some of the other data that is lying with the client, right? So targeting the right audience, layering it with the retargeting audiences makes it more niche, and you cater towards the right audience from the digital point of view. Apart from the targeting that I just mentioned, right? I think you also mentioned this point, that we need to cater towards the right messaging. Okay, right messaging also plays a very vital role. When I say right messaging, I mean that you need to highlight the USPs, you need to highlight the actual CTA, which is the call to action. You need to highlight that let's say if a car is costing, let's say 30 lakhs, and that 30 lakhs should be there in some of the other on your banner, or your communication, and so on and so forth. That same communication needs to be there on the landing page where you're taking the user to, right? So this increases the relevancy, this increases the user involvement with your ad, with your landing page, and thus it also leads to a lower cost of acquisition. Apart from that, we also need to know that if at all you're getting a lead, okay, you need to cater that leads in the next an hour or two. Okay, if you connect with the lead after 3-4 hours, then that becomes a cold lead, because at the same time other competitors are also present on the digital platforms. So I think, yeah, these are the factors I will take into consideration if at all I'm looking at a CSC.
Got it. Great. So targeting, then retargeting, then the right message, then how you're dealing with those leads that you're handling. So there's a
Correct.
lot of things across the entire chain that needs to be handled if the customer acquisition costs needs to be optimized.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To carry this whole thing forward, Ronak, since you have been working extensively in the telecom space, is customer acquisition cost something that's critical in the telecom space as well?
So, Kapil, I think first thing we have to consider, and we need to get this straight. CAC is critical for every business that's operating in the market. Okay, no business should be growing, and obviously no business will be growing without considering the CAC. Obviously, the growth of that business can't be a long-term growth if it is not operating in a sustainable CAC. Okay, The urgency of CAC can be different for every business. Like a business which is well established in the market, the urgency of CAC can, they might have some leeway on how urgent it is to get to that threshold. Some businesses which have just started to run their business in the market, the urgency will be very high. From the day one itself, they'll have to operate at a CAC which is sustainable for them. Obviously, a player which is very well established in the market might have some leeway, some comfort within that period. Maybe they are willing to spend more at a higher CAC. But after that, also, if they want a long-term sustainable business, they'll have to bring down the CAC. And all the efforts that we are putting in as a marketer, at the end, the North Star metric is how we are exactly bringing down the CAC. We all are working towards that for any business. I'm sure no business would like to operate at a CAC which is higher than the profitability of that business. So I think this is very important for everyone to understand that the urgency might differ from business to business, industry to industry, but CAC is critical for every business.
Got it. Great. And so as Ronak, you mentioned that no matter what, CAC is critical. But answer that quick questions that there are companies that comes more for performance marketing side, and then there are few or more on the brand building campaigns who wants to go ahead with the more of a brand building side. Is the CAC equally important from them, or is there? Have you seen any kind of how do you really set the expectations also for these two campaigns?
So the way I think it's customer acquisition cost, but another way to like define CAC is the cost of convincing a user to buy a product or service, right? So that's what is CAC, right? And whether you're doing branding or you're doing performance marketing, at the end of the day, the funnel is the same. Like you need to go from top to bottom, and that's how you need to, from awareness to consideration to purchase. And so whether you're doing branding or performance, you might have sometimes it's different teams and those teams don't communicate with each other. But when you're on the business side, you're just looking at one funnel, no matter what team is working on what. So I think Nikhil mentioned a really important point. I thought I'll just highlight it. Nikhil actually spoke about call centers, right? So a lot of so even some of my clients are also telecom, right? And so what happens is we get leads, and then there is a call center calling those leads up. What's important here is uh, the call center personnel is the first and probably the only human being who is ever going to talk to your potential customer that is coming there. So that makes it really important for him to know basically what your business is all about, and to be confident in basically communicating that to your potential customer. So when you're having call center calls, you should know exactly what your product is and how to basically convince the customer to go lower down the funnel, or convince him to basically pay. So I just wanted to actually highlight that since you mentioned it.
Great. I think what Nikhil also mentioned and the conversation you're taking forward, we'll go deeper into this, but just to get a kind of a holistic, let's just quickly understand from the B2B side also. So Amish, if you could kind of, since that's a complex place to be in, B2B marketing, so is the customer acquisition cost, even measuring that, and having one account just changes the whole customer acquisition to a completely different level. So how is that handled in the B2B space? If you could give us a brief idea on the same as well.
So I would say it's a bread and butter for the B2B business, basically. If you don't control your CAC, practically you are out of the business. The reason being said that, for every B2B business, there is a separate marketing budget. I mean, if you naturally any B2B business at enterprise level, right? So it has all set processes like marketing and sales and production and everything, right? So without the budget, you can't even move forward. So any B2B business, it goes one step further down, that not only the CAC, but what will be the cost of your marketing qualified lead versus what is the cost of your sales qualified lead. So it goes one step further down when it comes to a B2B. So I would completely agree with Nikhil, Ronak, and Anson that CAC is very, very important for any business, whether it's a B2C or B2B, or be it any country or any industry.
Great. So now that that is well established, let's just go a little deeper. I think Nikhil, Amsan, you guys have already taken a step forward. So if we really look at the key levers of handling it, right? Nikhil pointed out few of them in the initial, and then there are times wherein as an agency we are handling maybe the lead part of it, and then it goes out to an organization. So how are those things handled? So if you really have to make sure that the customer acquisition cost is very well optimized across the entire funnel, what are the levers and how to handle them? And I would request all of you can contribute to the, this
So
discussion.
I'll just chime in over here, Kapil. So I think before diving into the CAC and how exactly to control the CAC, obviously that's the final North Star and final metric that every business is chasing. But there are multiple smaller levers that is impacting your final CAC. Okay. To get into that, let's understand the entire customer journey from start till end. Okay. First touch point where the customer is getting prospective customer is getting in touch with the product of the brand. Now that's a two-way highway. Okay, one is obviously the brand can reach to the customer by pushing the communication, or the customer comes to the brand if the intent is high, obviously. So over that I think Nikhil mentioned it very well when he mentioned in the first when he started the discussion about identifying the right set of TG. Okay, the audiences, the definition of the audiences is very, very important. You need to understand what type of TG or what type of audience personas will be needing your product. Okay, there's no point in going too generic. Let's assume if it's a telco brand who's launching, or who is basically launching a product or launching a prepaid SIM, or making the entire offline space into a digital space and launching it on digital, a prepaid SIM. What type of TG will be currently looking for a SIM? Is it a student who has got a new phone and is looking for a SIM card? Is it a working professional who is currently facing a lot of network issues, needing a lot of data, and would be requiring a SIM card? Bucket your TG correctly, identify your TG correctly. Okay, that's the first step. And that's where identifying the TG, and that's the first lever or the parameter which basically impacts your CAC. Then what exact communication are you delivering to your audience bucket? Okay, if you need to penetrate into tier 3, tier 4 markets, do you want to go regional? Okay, uh, if obviously you don't want a generic communication across all the audience bucket. There are multiple audience buckets, and multiple audience bucket will resonate with a different type of communication. A student might resonate to a different communication, a working professional might resonate to a different communication. So have different type of communication for different maybe audience buckets. So that's where your CTR or a click or a CPC on digital comes into picture, obviously, because that's the second lever. And then once the user or the prospective customer interacts with your communication, lands on the landing page, how do you stitch the entire journey? Is the communication on the landing page mapping it back to the communication that you're showing on the creative? Let's assume if you're going regional, is the landing page is in a regional language? There's no point
Correct.
in communicating in regional and your landing page is in English. Okay, you need to stitch the entire journey to avoid the drop-offs. And obviously for brands where there is an offline journey, let's assume a credit card, a BFSI client into credit card space, where a lead is just the first step. There is a offline interaction with the customer as well. So how do you basically lever, or how do you basically move the needle on the lead to activation or lead to disbursals? How do you improve the quality? How exactly you give in the right set of insights to the brand when it comes to call center analysis as well? So when you look at all these parameters, smaller buckets, then you reach to a final decision or a final metric, which is the CAC for the business. So you need to ensure that you are operating at the right levels across these smaller. You can call it as a project, or you can call it as levers, you can call it as customer funnel, anything. But you need to crack everything to meet your final goal, which is the CAC for the business.
Correct. And just adding to what I think Ronak just said. Okay, so each and every level, okay, relevancy is the most important factor. Okay, but there are some cases. Okay, I just like to highlight one example of, let's say for example, if someone is looking for psoriasis treatment, it's an ailment, right? So in this kind of a treatment, right, in on the Google front, if at all, if someone is not searching for this kind of a keyword or a terminology, okay, then there are high chances of the CAC going higher. The reason for this is because since it's a very niche category, we will have to, and the client wants some of the other traction or some of the other leads in that particular category. Okay, but over here, since it is very niche, not many users are searching for it. It is not bucketed when it comes to your Facebook as a platform. It is not bucketed in your interest targeting. Then there is a chance that we need to go slightly broader. Okay, we then if at all we have to target, let's say, homeopathy treatment, we have to go for something like ailment, something of that sort. But at every point of time, okay, if we are considering the CAC, okay, we need to have a very logical reasoning when it comes to the budget, because client is spending monies in order to get a business for him. But if at all if it is not making any sense for him in terms of the CAC, we need to have a logical reasoning behind it.
Great.
So I think both Ronak and Nikhil mentioned relevancy, right? So just to give you an example of relevancy, right? Like for example, I had a client whose customers were very young, and they had the youth have very low disposable income. So generally, when we should run a campaign, what we realized is if we run a campaign in the beginning of the month, we had a very low CAC and we had very high conversion because people are being paid at that time, right? And then when you basically run your campaign in the middle of the month, it suddenly increases. So that's when knowing who your customers are really matters, right? So then what we started doing is we started spending more money upfront rather than at the end of the month. So that's what knowing your customers does.
Right.
Great.
Agreed with Anson that, especially into B2B segment, there are, you can see the pattern that there are certain months, there are budgeting months where a customer has to consume their budget in the B2B business, right? All those months you will see a very good response to your ads, to your search queries, right? And there are certain months where the budget just has been consumed or you are not in the budget planning phase, right? If you run your ads over that time, the kind of response you get to your specific ads and all that, it will be less as compared to the budgeting season. So yeah, I totally agree with Anson, Ronak, and Nikhil that relevancy and knowing your customers makes a lot of difference, and it helps you to improve your CAC overall.
Great. So great. So I think that's kind of set the stage that we understand now what are the levers and how critical is the relevancy across the board, and that makes sure that the communication that we're doing is appropriate. I'll just take the conversation to the next level. I'm really tempting to ask this from you, Anson. Since let's say I'm an agency and I want to make sure that all the accounts that we are handling, we deliver the best CAC in the industry, right? And there are multiple accounts that goes on. And at the team level, when you recruit people, nobody is fully aware of the entire life cycle. So if I really want to make sure that an account handling team really handles it properly, is there some specific skills or training or some new job profiles that needs to be introduced? How do you make sure that I have a team that really delivers effective CAC for all customers? Is there some guidelines for agencies out there?
So, I think the major thing, right, and what I've gone through, like working in different agencies, is to understand each business has its own product and service life cycle. Like to understand what that particular business life cycle is, right? And so, just to deviate a little bit, we've been talking about CAC, right? And we've been saying, like, suppose you get a CAC of 500. How do you know what is this CAC low or high? Or like usually in agencies or in whenever you run ads, you're just saying that okay, last month the CAC was 450 and this time we've got it at 400, so yeah, it's great, we've basically done a good job. But that's not the way to judge like what the CAC is, unless and until you know what is the lifetime value of that customer that you have actually got. That CAC could be really terrible. Maybe that customer that you've acquired at a lower CAC is not there for a long period of time, and hence actually your LTV is very low compared to that. So so just coming back to when you're building a team, you need to make them realize that these are the aspects that go into running an effective campaign and to get the max ROI for your client.
That's great. I think that's very well pointed out. I do remember that the same thing happened with us in a different way. We've been in the training space, and we were offering training at the price point of 50,000. So a CAC was making sense for us, which is a percentage of that. And suddenly there was other companies like Upgrad and all that comes in that were offering training about few lakhs more on an education side. And the kind of CAC they can actually build in was totally different. And suddenly
Correct.
most of the channel become ineffective. So it's not just so for me it may not be relevant, for other person it may be relevant. For me
Correct.
if it's support it's okay, but for other person maybe 400 is too high. So yeah, it
Exactly.
depends on what lifetime value for me, and compared to that, what is the CAC and great. So I think
Correct.
that's interesting.
I
Just
think,
to
Kapil,
kind
here's
of
where the
also,
point of urgency comes into
sorry,
picture. Urgency for any brand. The point we spoke
great,
about, the urgency for the CAC, how urgent it is.
So even
great.
this, right? For example, like if you're really good at interacting with your customers after they have converted, and you nurture them, and you to maturity and all, your lifetime value is always going to be much higher. So you can afford a higher CAC. Like you can afford 500 rupee CAC instead of your competitors getting a 400 rupee CAC, because you've basically done the hard work to basically nurture your client and have a higher LTV than your competitors. So that's
Yes.
also something that comes into consideration.
Yeah, and just to kind of close on that, the earlier question that I asked, like from in terms of making sure that your team is ready, is there, you train every one of them on something, or the account manager needs to be sensitized? How exactly does that part handled? Is there anybody who wants to
So
highlight on?
yeah, so I'll just quickly, so what we do over here in Reprise, okay, so now if at all, you have a team, right? So there is a high possibility that, let's say there are 5 people in the team. Out of those 5 people only, there are only 2 people who are, interacting with the client, who are good at interaction, who are good at taking out the optimization steps, who are good at analyzing, right? But the rest 3 are someone who are only good at executing, okay? But now in order for a team lead, okay, to grow, okay, so we also need to ensure that the rest 3 who are only doing execution, they also should look at the optimization analysis, interacting with the client, so on and so forth. So what we do over here in my company is that we conduct a training session on every bi-weekly or a monthly basis. Now this training session is nothing but we just tell that particular individual, that particular team, that hey, let's say that these are the 5 topics that that in Google Ads, let's say you have to talk on search, you have to talk on performance mac, you have to talk on this channel. Not much, but only like a slider or 2 slides, okay? So what happens is, due to this, Kapil, is their fear of talking in front of someone, okay, that goes, okay, they get a confidence in order that even so, we, even if that particular person is wrong, right, we try to correct him at that particular point of time, because I have observed in many of the cases in my team as well, because many people have got, they know the answer, okay, they know what is going on, but they just don't speak, okay? So training and development is the best thing that that has worked for my particular team, for those people who are capable enough to handle things, but just because of fear they are not able to speak. So this is, I think, one part that I think everyone should take into consideration.
Great. Great. So let's just move to the next stage. And Amish, I wanted to ask you this question, since B2B is fairly complicated, and so usually since there are a lot of decision maker and a lot of knowledge is internally in the organization, and having an agency to work on some campaign that gives a good, uh, effective customer acquisition cost. And so how is this, like, what work should be kept in house, what can be outsourced to agencies? How does this whole flow to get effective customer acquisition, especially in B2B? How does this engagement really works? That's something that I wanted to have a brief
Right.
understanding.
So typically every B2B business has their own in-house team, and there are certain campaigns which they outsource, right? So what typically I do is I play on strengths, right? So I know what are the strengths of my team. For example, my team is very good at, getting an customer acquired by organic, that is SEO, right? And social media. But something where I need, or my team needs help is, let's say, with a paid campaign on LinkedIn. That is something we are not very good at, or my team has not very good exposure with, right? So I typically judge that, what are the areas, what are the different channels where, I lack a specific skill set, and I typically outsource those specific channels. And again, for that, what we used to do is we typically define that, what could be the basic CAC for us which we can afford, right? We know the ticket size, typical ticket size what a customer could spend. We know the generic average conversion rate. So we back calculate that, if the average CAC is this and average conversion rate is this, and this is a possible revenue, this is the maximum CAC what we can afford. And based on that, we give a possible that, the maximum CAC which we can afford for this particular channel is this. And based on that, we define certain KPIs and then outsource it with the agency. So that's that's how we do typically.
Great, great, great. And in terms of uh, if I have to really measure the real CAC, right? And the different business have different complications, right?
Right.
What are the kind of tools, whether it is at the reach level, nurturing level, end-to-end measurability, or for optimization, all the tools that we use? What are the tools that you would like to highlight that really helps in measuring as well as optimizing? So all of you can, contribute to this.
So I will start with what actually helped me in the last 2 years, right? Just before the COVID hits us, what we did is we simply implemented a basic feature which was missing a long time, and that was online chat. Right, we were running a lot of campaign, but the basic feature what we were missing is online chat. We didn't have online chat, and that online chat, a simple feature, has removed a lot of hurdle when the customer lands on the website. It practically improved the overall, customer acquisition cost by at least 2%. I mean, it decreased the custom CAC by 2%, literally all across the channel. But yeah, it helped me to, optimize my conversion rate, where I spend a lot of money on Google AdWords. Earlier, the conversion rate was less. After implementing the chat, conversion rate has suddenly jumped up. So, removing the hurdle on a landing page by implementing a chat is the best I would suggest for any website, right? Give a helping hand to your clients whenever they are on the website, whenever they are on the landing page. Are they looking for something? Even on the chat, if you implement a pop-up, simple pop-up that, can we help you with anything? Or, nowadays there are a lot of tools which are available in online chat where you implement a chat bot, or even we can customize the chat messaging as well. You can do announcement on your landing page using the chat tools. If you do all the simple tips and tricks, I mean, that will help a lot to improve your conversion rate and ultimately decrease your CAC. That is one thing which I would suggest. And the second thing is to implement the marketing automation tool. That also helped us a lot to, nurture the existing acquired customer, and to resell them, upsell them the existing services.
Got it.
So, Amish, when you say marketing automation, you're talking about email marketing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's something that even I was coming to. It's like email marketing has been a game changer for. I think in this digital age, we don't look at email that much, but email still converts very high
Definitely.
for a lot of players, right? And right now with Mailchimp and HubSpot and all, we can basically automate email marketing based on what pages people have basically visited on your website and have customized messages only for them. So that's really powerful to do.
Great. So marketing
So I think
automation,
Kapil,
which
apart
include
from sorry, you are, please go ahead, Kapil. You're saying something.
yeah, yeah. I was just summarizing so far. Yeah, please go ahead, add to that.
Yeah, so I was just saying that obviously apart from your online tools and like Amish mentioned, the experience on the landing page, I think there are a lot of third-party tools available in the market as well, which helps you to automate the manual efforts, which basically goes into your campaign. It's about how exactly you automate those things, how exactly you automate the repetitive stuff that goes around every day on an everyday basis. Once you do that, a business that operates at scale, you can't have a lot of manual efforts going in. Okay, you need to have automation kicking in so that you're able to scale and you're able to sustain at that scale which is there. Once you are at a smaller scale, it's easier to put in a lot of manual efforts, and it's easier to manage the business, and it's easier to have all the day-to-day activities in place. But once the scale, the spends, the activities increases online, you need to automate stuff. That's where efficiency kicks in, and that's where your CAC at the end, that also helps you to bring down the CAC, because the manual efforts which basically you are putting into towards the repetitive task, now you're applying towards strategizing your campaign. Now you're applying towards into the right direction, which at the end helps you to bring down the CAC.
Got it. Nikhil, you want to add to that any tools that you would recommend?
No, I'm in line with Amish, Ronak and Hans.
So
Okay,
just
so
to add,
on top of
Kapil,
yeah,
sorry. So with scale, right? So when Ronak was talking about scale, we faced a lot, right? So if you have a smaller um, call center, for example, right, and you're getting a lot of lead inflow, how do you prioritize leads, so that you can improve your CAC in some way? So that becomes very difficult. There are certain tools in the market that you can integrate with your CRM, and that will score your leads. Like for example, if a person has spent a lot of time on the website and then filled up a lead, that the score of that lead would be 8, for example, or a person who has basically filled up a newsletter will have a score of 4. So when it comes to the sales team or the person calling up, they'll know, these leads are more priority than these leads, so hence we should call them faster, so that so with scale, yeah, scale is a big problem. So I mean, it's good if you can scale it, but then after to nurture and basically call up leads become very difficult,
great.
and we need automation to facilitate that. So
Absolutely. I think overall, if I look at marketing, automation is not one tool, but it's a whole set of tools that are there.
Yeah, multiple tools. Yeah.
And in our case, like for example, at our size, we can't afford tools like HubSpot. So one of the tools that has really helped is possibly Zapier and likes of that, like Automate.
Yeah.
So we need to ensure that from a CRM till the chat systems to email marketing campaign, everything is getting integrated. Without those tools integrating all the systems that you're kind of using, it's pretty tough. So that's possibly I would like to add to the list that you guys have already shared, which has helped in our case. Another question I have, Ansan, you talk about the whole email marketing, the nurturing part, right? And usually, like we do nurturing, but we do it in house, right? And because we think that we have the domain understanding, so we are the one who's most suited to do that activity. But what kind of role agencies play when it comes to the lead nurturing part? Do you leave it at the lead stage, or how does that whole engagement works?
so when once you get a lead, right, depending on what stage the lead is on, and then we can be and to engage the lead in a timely manner, either through email marketing or through even content. Even what we are doing right now is a webinar, right? This is content, and to target people who are relevant users or to this webinar. That's how you're basically nurturing the lead. So when you talk about lead nurturing, what you are practically doing is you're building trust, and you're basically establishing domain proficiency, and you're telling people that I know about what I'm talking about, and this is trust, and it's a process through which then after a lead will actually convert to a sale. So that is
And
something that even as agencies dealing with the client, we can advise them on, because there are different agencies, right? Like for example, Group M deals with performance, okay, but they will probably might have another agency dealing with like email marketing, or another agency dealing with other aspects of the lead nurturing journey. It's basically, maybe we can integrate and have a joint call and basically discuss all this before they go forward with their strategy.
And I think, not only that, I mean, adding to what Anson just said, I mean, if at all you're giving your client a lead, right? And once once the client gets all the lead dump, this lead dump can be then further used in all the digital platform in order to, filter the audiences further. Okay, now let's say if the lead has been segregated into potential and non-potential leads, right? The potential lead bucket and the non-potential lead bucket can be then uploaded into your Google, Facebook, or whichever console you're working on, right? You can use those buckets to create a similar audience. I mean, Ronak, Anson, and Amesh would be familiar with all these terms and all the audiences as well. So you can use these particular audiences to create a lookalike. You can use those lookalike to target. You can use those lookalike to into your campaigns to target the audiences further. So this again, all the aspect then drill down to relevancy, right? So you increase your audience horizon. Once you increase your audience bucket, you are catering more towards your targeted audience. So I think this also becomes a very important factor. And not only leads, even the leads that has been converted into sales, right? You can use those buckets as well. So this becomes like an ongoing chain and a repetitive chain. In our cases, we use this kind of a buckets on a 2 monthly basis, right? So after every 2 months, client sends us the dump back to us that, hey, these are the leads which converted into sales. These were the non-converted leads. Especially when it comes to a luxury brand or a shopping brand, right? So we get these leads, this conversions on a monthly or a bi-monthly basis. So we use those particular buckets into the campaigns to cater towards the relevant audiences.
Great. So I think you've touched upon almost all the aspects from reach, relevancy to conversion to nurturing to all the tools we use to various industries, how we are experiencing it. So now let me just open up the floor for questions. So anybody, if you have any question, I can see 5-6 questions already there. So I'll pick it up. So while I'm taking those questions, just type it down in the question panel. If you want to address it to someone, just make sure that you mention the name of that person also. So I'll just possibly read it out to make the whole transition easy. So there's a question, Amish,
Sure.
for you. Amish, you spoke about CSE. Can you describe it in detail?
Can you repeat that?
Can you repeat? Yeah, I
You
didn't
spoke
get.
about CSE. You spoke about CSE. Mohsin has asked this question. You've spoke about CSE. Can you please explain it in detail? Is this something that?
Yeah,
also
Mohsin, if you
includes-
can, if you can give little context, it would be easy for me to answer.
Sure. Wrinkle has a question. What can be the ideal CAC in India for B2B SaaS business?
What would be the?
So I
Ideal CAC for B2B SaaS business in India.
So it typically depends on the ticket size, what you have to offer. What I personally believe is, if you are a mid-size organization or an enterprise level, typically your CAC should not be more than 15 to 20% of your ticket size. If you are playing under 15%, you are, on a very safer side. I mean, you can optimize much better, but yeah, 15% is what I would suggest.
another ratio probably would be helpful is if your LTV to CAC ratio should be around 3:1. So if you're not an e-commerce business, an e-commerce business basically operates at 1:1 also. But if you're of a SaaS business or something, a 3:1 LTV to CAC ratio is
Minimum,
pretty
yeah.
healthy. Yeah.
Great. So the next question is from Pratima. If you do not have much to cross-sell or upsell, then your LTV might be a fixed value. That's a question. Is that, or is this something, right? If you have nothing to upsell, nothing to cross-sell, then it's just one transaction, right? Or how do you justify?
Actually, to be
That's
honest,
right,
Kapil,
but-
that's
Yeah, Ronak, sorry, go on.
I'll just chime in over here. So I think it's not necessarily that it will be just the first transaction. So let's assume if let's take an example of prepaid sim, okay, for that matter. Once I acquire a customer, okay, it's although he's using a prepaid sim, but on a every monthly basis, the frequency of the customer, the frequency that the customer is paying back to the business also matters. Okay, the frequency at which he or she is transacting with the business also leads to a revenue for the business. So it doesn't matter if you don't have anything to cross sell or upsell. It's also about the frequency at which the customer is again using your product. Okay, for a cosmetic brand, the frequency might be high. For a brand like, let's assume, Jeep, okay, in automobile space, the frequency would be 1. Okay, so in that case, the transaction value would be equal to the lifetime value of any particular customer. Okay, so it depends on business to business, but it's not that if you don't have anything to cross sell or upsell, it's not that the first transaction is equal to the lifetime value of the customer.
Yeah, and I think what Ronak said is absolutely right. It is, I think, according to me, it is very rare that some of the other person will not have a cross sell or an upsell, opportunity, because in each and every business, some of the other thing is there in order to cross sell or upsell. Even if it is an automobile, even if it is a clothing brand, even it is like any shopping thing, right? If a person is buying something, which means he has intent to buy something more. Okay, we just need to tap that particular person in the right aspect with the right messaging. That's it.
I agree. I mean, in B2B as well, the kind of, if you are offering subscription business, the rate of renewal is, it directly impacts your LTV value.
Correct.
Just to kind of further question on this from my side, is there a way to account the referral business, maybe the brand advocacy that you're building in because somebody has bought and is referring to now others, or is that something that is accounted for, or like to in the LTV, or you never account that part?
I would say that it typically goes how your business count it. In B2B, we typically refer a referral as a different channel altogether. So it doesn't account into, LTV.
Right. Okay. Great. So there's a question from Kajal. How much does a regional activity actually help? Seeing that the rural penetration for digital is going slow, when there is no interdependency involved in the business, then how do you influence acquisition, especially in the regional market size or rural penetration?
So I think I mentioned this in the conversation earlier. So if at all, if you don't have the example which I gave for psoriasis, right? So if at all you don't have any volume or anything, that if you are selling something and if that is been not searched on the biddable platforms or any Google or Facebook or any as a matter of fact, so you need to go slightly broader. Okay, once you have a good amount of history, once you have a good amount of traction on your product, then you can go slightly niche. Is what if at all, if you are going broader, then let's say your CAC is 1000, for example. If you again build a history, then you go slightly lesser, your CAC then keeps on reducing, and you at one point of time it will come at a level where it will not reduce. The reason for this is because at that point of time, that is the lowest amount of cost which is being catered toward that particular product.
So I think, Kapil, it's not that for every brand or every product, regional marketing or regional communication will work. Okay, you need to understand that the consumer or the audience persona that's there in tier 3 or tier 4 market, is it a right fit for your product? Firstly, we need to understand that. Okay, let's assume if the product itself is not catering to the needs of the customer sitting in a tier 4 market in our country, there's no point in going regional and then realizing, why, or then racking our brains why regional communication is not working. So firstly, it's important to understand if it's a product which caters to a mass, which caters to audiences that goes or that are residing in tier 3 or tier 4 markets. If yes, if the question is, if the answer is yes, obviously, then yes, regional marketing does play a role. Okay, Obviously, when you communicate in their local language, the resonation and the frequency does match well. Okay, the connection with the consumer does match well. Obviously, then there are other factors as well that comes into the picture. But yes, then it's a good route to take basically after analyzing the product and the market fit.
Yeah. And just continuing to what just Ronak said, so I am on this opinion that you should experiment it, okay, for a month or two. But if at all, if you're not getting the desired traction from the regional cities, then I think the answer is pretty clear.
And I would add to that, you need to really look at the revenue part. Just to give you an example, for example, the company which I work for, it offers market research report, and typically those are in English, right? So we did an experiment by launching a marketing campaign in Japanese language because we want to tap into the Japan market, right? Now, Japanese people have a tendency to have everything in their local language, right? So we got a lead, we got a customer, but right, we couldn't deliver the product in their own language. As a result, we got a customer, but we couldn't offer the product, right? So bottom line is very important. You acquire the customer, but if you are not able to offer your product, it's a total waste.
Correct.
Got it. So I think message I'm getting is it's relevancy everywhere. So
Yeah.
it needs to be placed, and that's how it decides. Great. So next question, Ronak, it's been asked to you, but before I ask you this question, guys, I'm actually quickly launching this poll since we have limited time left, and I want to make sure that you guys are given an opportunity to do that. So we are actually scheduling the next webinar on 18th of November, and this is particularly on B2B, digital marketing for B2B. So if you would like to register in this, just mention yes, we'll automatically register you for this webinar. So while you're responding to this question, Ronak, the question is that what an ideal landing page should be and the CTA button should be. So I know it's a generic question, but if you could highlight the top key items that should be there.
So I think Kapil, there are a couple of not couple, I would say 3 or 4 parameters on which you need to understand or you need to judge the landing page. Okay, for every product, obviously the landing page and the CTA will not remain the same. But is your landing page communication matching with the communication that you are showing on the creatives? Okay, first aspect is that the experience of the landing page. As a consumer, you yourself experience the landing page and then see how exactly or how much efforts you are taking to basically complete the journey. Okay, so the product experience is very important on the landing page. And then obviously so I think we discussed about regional communication as well. Okay, and there we discussed that if the communication is in regional or a local language, and if the landing page is in English, okay, there's no point, or there's no that's not the ideal way to do it. Okay, so it's important to match the experience as well from a customer standpoint, and also I think you need to do a lot of competitive research as well in this space. You need to understand what a competition is communicating on the landing page, what their offers are, what your USP is. Okay, and communicating the right communication and USP on the landing page is very important to avoid the drop-offs. Obviously, I don't know if I've answered the question, but it's a sort of generic question, to be honest, but it will differ from player to player, product to product. But there are certain parameters, obviously, on which you can judge or you can take an approach towards an ideal landing page, basically.
Great. I think you've highlighted all the critical aspects. This question, Amish, for you from Peter Kige. So he's saying CS means customer service. So customer service and budget is being very key to customer acquisition. What's your opinion on the same?
Right. So I would definitely agree with that. In fact, I would like to give you an example that what we typically do at our company. So we typically cater 2 different clients, right? One is just like a kind of product. We have market research report, we sell it online, and the client buys it and then moves on, right? And then after upselling, cross selling, we offer them a SaaS model which we have developed, right? The SaaS model is totally driven by customer success team. It's nothing but how your sales team approach the client, how they help clients to solve their problems, right? And whenever you go in a B2B SaaS model, it's all about meeting the satisfaction of the client, right? No matter how good your product is, how good your services are, if you are not meeting the satisfaction of your end user, ultimately they are going to go, right? On the other side, if your product is average, but if your customer support team is excellent, they are giving the best experience to the client to meet their satisfaction level, the renewal rate will be much more higher, right? So whenever it is a B2B SaaS model, I would say that, a customer success team or a sales support team plays a very critical role over there. And there are different ways by incentivizing customer success team, by evaluating the renewal rate, a closure rate, a kind of opportunity added rate. You can incentivize them, and the way you can increase your upsell and cross sell.
There's an interesting question by Kajal. If anyone of you work in this space, if you are an OTT brand, right, and your content is messy, how do you approach acquisition in the market? And since the ratio is 3:1 of the number of people who stick to, how do you generally impact that also? So from the stickiness perspective and acquisition in an OTT business, anybody who has experience and want to share your views on that? The OTT side, anyone of you have done any work?
So I think, Kapil, obviously I've not directly worked with the OTT space, but in general, you understand the business and you understand the psychology that goes behind it. Obviously, in OTT space, so obviously the space is very competitive in nature. Okay, so in terms of content, okay, content rules over there. Okay, so you need to understand that firstly, obviously, while you are acquiring any customer or while you are going for the stickiness, your content is at par which is there in the market. Okay, that's the first, or the first step to go into the market, the first step to drive or bring down your CAC. Once you have that in place, then there are obviously multiple ways, or the processes remains the same to bring down the CAC and to increase the stickiness. Obviously, right, connecting with the TG at the right time, okay, with the right messaging, with the right content, analyze the customer pattern in terms of what type of content the customer or the consumer is the customer is consuming. Basically, he or she, are they watching more of horror content, are they watching more of regional content, are they watching more of humor? Okay, understand the pattern and then suggest those content, suggest those communication, change the product, change the experience of the product in the fashion that the more relatable content is being shown to the consumer. Okay, that's how you basically improve the stickiness on any product, by enhancing the customer experience. Obviously a person who has directly managed OTT business would be able to give an in-depth analysis on this, but I think the processes more or less remains the same. The psychology and the approach remains the same.
Yeah, so
And
well
I think
said actually, Ronak.
emphasis.
Yeah, go ahead, Nikhil.
Yeah, and just adding to what Ronak said, emphasis more on the mobile as a device, because as of now, if you see, everyone consumes the content on the go. Okay, so similar to what Ronak said, even I have not worked as at par on the OTT side, but this is my view that if you focus more on the mobile device, and if you make content, glossy, or which can be adaptive to each and every mobile's display, I think that will work too.
Got it. Great. So there's another question from Oak. Let's spell his name as. So for the new brand in B2C, from which year from launch the CAC should start coming down? If you share any views on that.
I think that completely depends on
That's a
what
very good
kind of
question to say.
business that particular brand is into. And let's say, for example, if it is, for example, cars, so your CAC should be lower in the festive season, because everyone has got their own discounts, everyone has got glossy offers that come into the picture. It might go up during the non-festive season, where basically during the rainy season, or somewhere down the line where the people are not buying it. That completely depends on the business, that completely depends on the trend. Okay, so yeah.
Also depends on
I think Kapil, at the end,
brand.
everything depends on the capital liquidity that you have.
Yeah.
So how much urgent, or how soon you want the CAC to come down. I think
Yeah.
seen brands like Red, you know, spending tons of money in marketing. Obviously, they have a vision, or they have something in the mind in future. Obviously, they're spending way above the revenue that they are generating, but they have the comfort of doing it, and they have the comfort of doing it at a higher CAC as well. Okay, so it depends on the comfort that you have. It depends on the capital liquidity that you have. It depends on the backing that you have. Nowadays, a lot of startups have a lot of funding which is there at the back of the marketing efforts that they are doing. So they have a longer time frame, or a longer comfort time, or you can say room to operate at a higher CAC. But a brand which doesn't have funding, or which doesn't have capital liquidity, they would want the CAC to be on a lower side from the day one. Okay. So I think it depends on that at the end.
Also, brands like Craig are burning money now to reap the benefits later, right? Like they are going for market share more right now, and then after later, when the market is empty a little bit, or when they have established themselves, they can basically reap the rewards out.
Correct.
So I think with this question, right, it's like I think branding plays a big role, right? So with this car example that Nikhil was giving, right? Suppose you're a new car in the market, nobody knows about you, right? Your CAC is not going to be like great, but if you do enough branding, top of the funnel where people actually know, okay, these are my features, this is the car, I know where this comes in, or you at least be recognizable and there is more trust, then you can start like reducing CAC, and that depends on how well you do it top of the funnel marketing, and then it basically flows down.
Correct.
I think in short, building a D2C brand or a B2C brand is an expensive proposition. So if
Yeah,
the thought is fine, you should
yeah.
look for funding rather than asking this question. So great. So I think I'm just quickly launching one more poll. We need your feedback how the session has been for you. So pick up an option which is most relevant for you. And I think we've already exceeded the session by 5 minutes. So while you're responding to this, I really want to thank all of you for being here, all the panelists. It has been a really interesting and engaging session. I personally have got a lot of value, a lot of insights on how we are running our business, and possibly all the participants out there must have got a lot of value. So thank you very much for taking time out, and thank you everybody for taking time out and attending today's session. If there's anything you guys want to say as a closing remark, and then we'll close the session.
Thanks, Kapil. I think thanks for having us here. It was great fun to interact with everyone and to hear everyone's thought from different industries working on different brands. Thanks for inviting, and I think it was a privilege to be here, Kapil.
Yeah, I mean, I'll second that, Kapil. I mean, I also learned a lot from talking to such experienced people in the panel, and just I think discussing it also makes certain concepts clear in your own head, like that's these things.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Kapil, for giving this opportunity. Yeah. I mean, got to know these people and got many insights. I think now it's a time to implement, log in and implement all these things.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Kapil. And I really like the kind of questions the audience has asked. It made us start thinking about
Yeah.
our own business. That yeah, this is something we could have done, or this might we have not tried, or this is something we need to ask our question as well. So yeah, the questions are really great and really lovely audience. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to be with lovely on this panel. Thank you, Kapil.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kapil.
Bye.
thanks.
Bye, everyone.